Welcome back to the channel, lads and ladies, and welcome to, well, I suppose this would be a midnight talk. I just finished my first session of Dungeons and Dragons with my buddies Sam and David. I brought the girls over to their house. Sam and David don't have a house together. These are two separate friends. It's Sam's house. It's not that kind of friendship. Anyway, so I go over to Sam's house with the girls, and I played some Dungeons and Dragons. Roughly, it's actually Pathfinder, but it's basically 3.5 D&D with a little bit more power and character choice, which is always a cool thing. It was set in an Eastern style setting, so like a China, Japan, mystical land, and I decided to build a character who is a kitsune, so a furry, a fox person who has magical abilities, and they just get to do some neat things like grow magical tails that give them spell-like abilities, and I always thought that was kind of cool, so I decided to go with it. And the character that I ended up making is a variant of the Paladin in the Pathfinder rule set that is called a Chosen One, which is basically someone who doesn't really realize that they're a champion of a god or some divine order until they come into that knowledge by way of a spiritual guide that is sent to them in the form of a familiar. So it's a simple animal of some kind. Mine is a cat called Sergeant Whiskers, which you may recognize as the cat that lives below our house in the real world. So Sergeant Whiskers made her way into the campaign. That's right, a female feline officer. And so my paladin is the chosen one of the cats, and he is a champion of the cat cult. So if you'd like info on the cat cult, I have a little text document that describes, well, basically what that is. But essentially, in the world of Pathfinder, all kinds of things can have spiritual power, and cats just at some point decided that cats have power, and that means that cats have power. So that's the cat cult. Cats doing cat things, and together with their belief in the power of cats, creating the power of cats. As I was building my character as a level 1 character, for some reason I thought I was starting at level 1. We were actually starting at level 3, so I built a level 1 paladin, and as I'm equipping myself, I had around 150 odd gold or something to spend. So I got some basic gear, and because I actually had a high dexterity build, I didn't really need to sink a lot of cash into armor and weapons. I just got some simple things, fairly cheap price, so I'm sitting with around 60 extra gold kicking around. And I see that the going rate for a common house cat is 3 copper, which is 0.03 gold, essentially 3 cents on the dollar, if you will. So I was like, hey Sam, let's just assume I have 200 cats. And of course by this point I hadn't decided what I was going to do with my character, but I was just joking around, seeing that, you know, it cost like 30 gold or something to get 200 cats. I was like, hey Sam, assume I have 200 cats. I was joking, but he treated me like I was serious, so I was like, okay, this is happening. Why does my character own 200 common house cats? And I decided that these are pretty much, you know, live on their own cats, but I'm sort of in charge of them, I guess, when it comes to the civil authorities. They acknowledge that I am the official owner of these cats, and they just kind of come and go, and they make up the core of what is the cat cult. So I'm the chosen one of the cats, as it were. So that's how I got the background for my character. And then once we started playing, Sam told me that we were going to be level 3, so I tacked on a few more levels to my paladin. Fairly easy to do, especially with a chosen one, as they only really come into their own once they get to around level 4, and then they really start picking up speed at level 7. But that's of course a conversation for another time. These D&D sessions, you don't level up super quick unless you decide to. So, starting out at level 3, I was lucky enough, which is a rare thing for me, to roll fairly close to maximum hit points, which is not bad as paladins get a d10. So I rolled 2 10s and a 9, giving me 29 base HP, which is quite good. Some of the tougher characters still have around that area of hit points if you're rolling for HP, so it's quite good. And then my stats were pretty good as well. Rolled d20s and went with numbers above 11. Ended up with a couple of stats that are not all that high, including my intelligence, just barely above average at 13, and my wisdom, again, not all that impressive at 13, but my other stats were fairly good, with dexterity standing out and charisma standing out. After my racial modifiers for being a foxman, I had a 21 in charisma and a 26 in dexterity, which starts to add some real flavor to my paladin. Generally, you think of a paladin as someone that clumps around in heavy armor with heavy principles weighing them down, but the chosen one of the cat cult is a little bit different of a feline, or a little bit different of a champion of the feline agenda, if you will. My goal, after all, to preserve the lifestyle of cats and encourage cats in doing cat stuff, I guess. So also, in a break from the traditional paladin, my alignment, and if you're not familiar with the D&D system, there's a legal alignment with reference to how you feel about the law. Either lawful, you believe that law is absolute; neutral, you can take it or leave it; or chaotic, where you are averse to following the law as a general principle. Basically, you want to do your own thing. My character is neutral when it comes to the law, and good when it comes to general morality. So I'm a good guy. I care about the lives and the feelings and the welfare of other people. I'm not evil, and I'm not indifferent either. I want the best for people. I like playing good characters. So I'm neutral good, champion of cats, or I should say the chosen one of cats. So moving on, I don't have a whole lot of other abilities, but it is nice to have a high attack bonus, so that at level 3 I get +3 to my chance to hit on top of my ability scores and whatever weapon I happen to be using. I didn't start with any magical equipment, but that was about to change within our first session. We'll talk about that later. So I met up, or rather I should say, Sam told us that David and my character had been traveling together, working together, experiencing the adventurer lifestyle, and we had just decided to take on a job. In fact, David and I looked at some postings, and we saw this posting about exploring and reporting on a mysterious and somewhat ominous tower that seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, and we decided to take on the job. And as I was discussing with David's character what to bring with us, how to prepare, I thought, you know what? Let's bring someone that knows their way around things like traps and locks along with us, because those are two things that we're fairly ignorant about, and if it is a dungeon as it seems, it might be a good idea. So we hired the skills of one Doug. Was it Doug? Was it Dave? Doug. Pretty sure it was Doug. It was Doug. Rest in pieces, my friend. What? Am I getting ahead of myself? So in terms of the game, our hired rogue was a general purpose investigator who was the equivalent of a level 5 character, so more powerful than us, and we basically Well, maybe that's getting ahead of ourselves. Suffice to say that I was confident in the skills of our hired hand. We agreed on a price which wouldn't break the bank for us. It was a little bit disheartening that he had agreed upon taking a third of the loot from our endeavor, but the price you pay for good help is often money well spent. So, in final preparations before leaving town, I decided, because I do have 200 cats as my followers, I think I've mentioned this, and they pretty much come and go as they please, but it's nice to have some things to treat them every now and then and keep up morale, and we're not going to do catnip again. That got a little weird. So I decided to purchase a pig for the kingly price of 50 coppers. I know, that's almost 20 times the cost of a house cat. And I think I named him Mr. Truffles. And Mr. Truffles, I ended up getting him a little tiny fedora as well. And I had him on a leash, and my animal handling skill is actually quite high for my character, so I was fairly adept at getting him to obey commands and follow along with us. And I kind of had him slated as a mobile luau, and just in case something happened overnight, I figured if Mr. Truffles was on first watch, we would definitely find out if some voracious creature decided to attack us. They would probably go for Mr. Truffles first. So if we didn't end up making a barbecue out of him, he could be an early warning system. He could have been, but, well, that's getting ahead of ourselves too. Let's get to the tower. Nothing happened on the way there, which was about, well, we were into the second day's journey by the time we got to the tower. Doug already getting his per diem for a 3-day pay ahead of time, 150 gold in his pocket, and he's set to work detecting traps for us. The first opportunity he had to detect a trap, he declares the door safe, but also stuck. So the door was jammed. First, Doug took a crack at it, pushing with his shoulder, not all that effective. Then, David's character takes a try at the door at forcing it open, not effective either. And I decided, as the paladin, to yeet myself into that door, crash it open. I rolled a good roll on my strength check, slam the door down, and walk face first into a fire trap, taking, after my reflex save, 7 points of damage, which is fairly high considering that a failed save would have meant that I take 14 points of damage, almost half my hit points. A very dangerous misstep to start off our adventure. So after hiring a specialist to detect traps for us, and having him fail to detect that trap, I felt a little bit burned. Singed, if you would. So I and my 3rd degree burns, and the rest of my party, with Doug leading the way, started working our way through this tower, and we discovered a few interesting things. And a few more traps were disarmed along the way, proving that Doug was starting to be worth his pay, in the midst of which we recovered a poison dart trap, the poison dart capable of being thrown at an enemy after the trap was disarmed and recovered, and an interesting magical trap that had a jewel capable of performing a maximum level flame hands attack when the jewel is shattered. So that went into my pocket, as I'm the best at throwing things among the group. Unless Doug has something he's not telling us. There wasn't all that much he was telling us. Sort of a quiet guy, that NPC. But he did continue to lead us through the tower, and eventually we're working our way up a winding staircase, and Doug is growing increasingly uncomfortable. His breathing becomes labored, and at one point he's almost breaking down. He feels like he can't push forward, and he tells us that he feels he needs to head back. Well, I had a pep talk with Doug. I let him know that there is something of a balance in this world, And from my experience, although it might not be as much as his, I've always seen that there's never been more than we can handle, and that may or may not be the case today. But it seems to me that we've reached the roughest patch, that the resistance is at the maximum at this point, and if we go on through that door without him, then he just will not be able to confirm or deny the presence of whatever loot or magical items happens to be on the other side of that door. Sam looks at me and he says, I'm not even going to make a diplomacy check on that one because of the words he chose. So Doug is convinced just by the statements that I made, and he pushes forward, leading the way, and right on the other side of the threshold before the door, Doug collapses into a pile of dead NPC and gore. Delightful. So I pop into hiding real quick, hiss at the 20 cats who were with us. By the way, only 20 of my roughly 200 cat followers happened to be with us on this adventure, that there was danger, which they completely ignored in their cat way and just started walking through the door with their tails high. Okay. So eventually I get up the nerve to examine poor Doug's expired corpse, finding on it the 150 pieces of gold we paid him with in advance. Thank you very much, Doug, for your donation to your memory fund. We will allocate those golds in accordance with your presumed will that we kick all kinds of monster ass on our way out of this tower. And also on Doug's body, a +1 short sword that was previously wielded by the aforementioned non-player character, and +1 leather armor. So I replaced my starter equipment with +1 equipment. It is so useful to hire help that is capable these days. Unfortunately, Doug, not capable of preventing himself from suffering the fate of an NPC that the DM had not balanced the encounters upcoming for. And so David's character and I ended up pushing through the doorway and discovering a room with a large pool of mystic-looking water, almost like a portal to another world, if you will, and a mysterious woman. I gave her my best sup and wiggled my charm person tail in her direction. She casually laughed off my attempt to enchant her and indicated that her real desire was for us to jump into that pool. Being the adventuring sort and having seen my newly hired compatriot explode in front of me, heedless of the danger, and enticed by the thought of exploring this adventure, I jumped right into the pool. We got teleported somewhere. It ended up being a cave network, surprising no one who's been through the standard DM tile set of where do I put the monsters from the monster manual encounters. And we ended up taking a quick rest so that David's character could get back some of his spells. I hadn't mentioned that he used a couple of spells, maybe 1 or 2. And we press forward, I in the lead, scouting stealthily. I did mention that I have a high dexterity character, and my spiritual guide, my familiar, is a cat, which actually gives me a +3 on my stealth checks. So all in all, I was actually surprisingly sneaky. Again, not your typical paladin by any means. So I'm in the lead, and with my keen sense of smell, being of the kitsune race, I detected something. Alerted to its presence, I recognized the creature as what could only be a basilisk. Aware of the danger, I flanked the creature in stealth, him having not noticed me. About 20 feet away from him, I flick out that gem from that trap that Doug oh so ingeniously recovered for us. Turns out that deals a maximized Flame Hand spell, so 20 full damage with a reflex save. And yet, the cockatrice, or the basilisk, the basilisk was not aware of me. It denies him his reflex, or his dexterity bonus to armor class, flat-footed if you will. Sam also decided that denies him a reflex save against the jewel. Now all I needed to do was hit him with the darn thing. I rolled a 6. 6 is generally not enough to hit anything, and yet I have a total attack bonus of +3 for my base bonus, with another 6 added on to that for my dexterity bonus. I have a 22 score in dexterity, so it's pretty ridiculous. Considering that, I think the end roll was, let's see, 6 plus 9, 15. I rolled a 15 to hit, which still would have been not enough if I had to punch through the thing's armor. But I didn't. All I needed to do was to get that gem to shatter against that basilisk, and that's exactly what happened. The thing explodes in a little intense burst of flame. The creature took so much damage that it was stunned and knocked unconscious from the shock, and David's character and I walk up to the thing and finish it off. And there was the end of our first Dungeons and Dragons session together. Getting through those initial things did take some time, and of course, as I brought the 2 girls and our friends have 4 boys, we had 6 kids there crawling all over us, trying to put our dice in their mouth, and generally just looking for, well, the most adventure that they could find. Our time was definitely not efficiently spent, and yet I had a great time. I'm looking forward to the next time I can play some D&D with my friends, and as an adult with 2 kids and a pretty busy home life because of things like this, I very much appreciate being able to get together with my friends. It was a great night, and I look forward to where we go after that. There should be plenty more monsters for us to fight, and hopefully we'll survive the encounters. But until then, I suppose we'll have to see. Pour one out for Doug. I'll definitely have to find his family when I make my way back to the world or the area I came from. Until then, mysterious adventures await us, I'm sure. Where will the chosen one of the cat cult end up? Will I ever describe who David's character actually is? Some sort of cleric, I think. Anyway, I'm sure I'll find out next week. Catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.